Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So, one time I was going to my local Walmart and I went in, got my stuff, and I got out. I was in a time crunch and I needed to get back home to feed my dog and go to work. So obviously, as fate would have it, I had parked in a one-way lane in a parking lot. This is where traffic should travel in only one direction, in the parking lot. This didn't seem so bad at the time, but this Karen had decided to drive the wrong way down the one-way drive, and a pickup truck that was headed the correct way got in her way. Now, as an adult, we would assume the bigger person would put their car in reverse and drive the opposite way, but no. They decided to park their cars in the middle of the lane and decided to have a steering contest right in the middle of the parking lot, in front of my car. Now, I was boxed in by these idiots and couldn't get out, so instead I decided to stay and watch the show. So, eventually, more like 2 minutes after I got there, the cops showed up. Cop walks up, recognizes me, the officer from another agency, and asks what's going on. I explained to the nice officer that Karen here, who has clearly forgotten to take her medication or had been drinking or a combination of the two, decided it was a good idea to have a pissing contest with a little guy in an F-350. No joke. The officer walks up to Karen and Chad and has both of them step out of their vehicles and meet in between the cars. He tells both of them that they are both going to put their cars in reverse and they are both going to leave or they are both going to jail. And then Karen starts yelling about how little man Chad in his car is wrong, and Chad likewise. The officer tells them both to shut up before they can finish, and tells them that if he heard another word out of either of them, then they are both going to go to jail. Both Chad and Karen shut up, got in their cars, and they left. Backstory: Muscular dystrophy is a medical condition I've had or started to actually suffer from its symptoms at the age of 6. As many may know, it's a progressive condition and it gets worse with age. Right now I'm 33 years old and currently I'm wheelchair bound. I made my peace with what I have a long time ago and stopped really feeling bad about myself. At one point I chose to focus on the positive things in my life and the blessings that I have, instead of pointing a spotlight on my misfortune. I have a warm, loving family that kept supporting me during the darkest days of my life, especially my younger sister. She has been my rock throughout all of our lives. When I was medically diagnosed with this condition, I later knew that my mother sat my sister down, simplified things for her as much as possible, and asked her to take care of her sister and look out for her even though she was a younger sibling. So since we were young, she was always very protective of me, and we grew up having a wonderful relationship between the both of us, and for that, I will always be grateful. Now, onto the story. Around 7 months ago, my sister decided to swing by my place to invite me for dinner at a fancy restaurant her husband is taking her and her young boy to. I told her that they should go as a young family without me and have a good time. But she insisted that I come and that her husband and little boy would really love it if I tagged along. So I happily agreed. A couple of days later, they came to pick me up from home, then we drove to the restaurant. When we got there, the waiter took us to our reserved table and we started going through the menus so we could pick something to eat. Since the moment I stepped into this restaurant, I got really fascinated by how well organized and clean everything was. It gave a really warm and nice feeling, but I couldn't help myself but feel annoyed at one thing that didn't feel like it belonged in a place like this. A loud, obnoxious female voice coming from the table behind us, laughing loud, speaking loud, and using a really horrid language on top of it, even though there were kids around. I didn't want to point this out to anyone on our table to not get annoyed with this woman as well in case they managed to miss her terrible aura. We ordered our food and waited for around 30 minutes before it was put right in front of us. Then, as we were starting to dig in, we heard a loud thud coming from behind us, followed by a deafening shriek from the same awful voice that apparently annoyed everyone around throughout the whole night. I kinda struggled to turn around to look and see what happened, but as I managed to do so, I see this Karen sitting on the floor and holding her leg tight while screaming non-stop, clearly from pain I suppose. It turns out, she was leaving her table for the ladies' room and hit her leg hard against one of the tables on the way. Honestly, I didn't feel the worst when I heard this. I mean, she annoyed the hell out of me when I was supposed to spend some quality time with my sister and her family. But I also don't think she deserves to be hurt like that, just because she was loud and obnoxious. But soon after, she gave me a bigger reason why she deserves every bad thing that could happen to her. Her friends and some of the workers tried to help her up, but she claimed her leg wasn't feeling right when she tried to stand on it, and that she couldn't even get up to at least sit on one of the chairs. People started suggesting calling an ambulance, especially after she made it sound this serious. But then this woman lifted her head up for a moment, looked around the restaurant, then locked eyes with me. It definitely felt like one of those target-locked moments. It sent a chill down my spine.
You! Give me that chair you're sitting in. It has wheels, right? I could move around with it for the time being.
I was like, what? It took a moment for me to realize she was actually talking to me, and I wasn't sure of that until she repeated what she said again, but this time with some select words that may have touched on my disability. But before I could answer, my sister stepped up and yelled at her, "What the hell did you just tell her? Are you crazy? I don't know what your problem is, but she's definitely not giving you her wheelchair. I don't care if your leg is bruised, broken, or needs to be amputated. You're not getting a single thing out of us, especially with that entitled, condescending attitude of yours." Once that woman fully grasped what my sister has told her, she snapped. Instantly, she got up on her feet, her injured feet, and stormed towards us. At first, she tried reaching for my sister's hair, but when she realized she couldn't grab it because my sister was sitting at the far side of the table, she decided that I was an easier target and that I was practically right under her at this point. She grabbed me by the collar of my blouse and pulled me off my wheelchair with all of her strength. I landed on the floor in shock, and before anyone could stop her, she started dragging my wheelchair towards her table while screaming like a mad person at me, my sister, and her good-for-nothing boyfriend. She was directing this at my brother-in-law. Remember when I said that my sister was raised to be protective of me? During high school, she felt the need to take a self-defense class to be able to defend me from whoever picked on me back then. And you could say it definitely paid dividends. In less than a second, she was right in front of Karen, who surprisingly took a swift swing at her, but sis managed to dodge it somehow, pulled out her stun gun, and fried the living hell out of that whale of a woman. That was the moment everyone's brains really processed what just happened, and they started to separate us all from each other, until the cops and EMTs arrived. It may have felt like an eternity, but the action part didn't really take more than 10 to 15 seconds. The cops arrived and tried to detain my sister at first, but her lawyer husband managed to calm them down and have them check the footage before taking any action they would later regret. By this point, my sister, with the help of her husband and the waiter, had helped me to my wheelchair and took me to a far corner in the restaurant until things got sorted out. After police officers reviewed the footage, it seemed as if asking us if we wanted to press charges or not was a dumb question. We absolutely did. Karen was taken in an ambulance by the time the cops were wrapping things up with us, saying they would be reaching out to us in the next couple of days for further investigation. I hugged my sister when they left, trying to calm her down because it seemed like she was struggling to hold it together, since clearly the adrenaline's effect was starting to fade out. Karen was charged and she was found guilty and was put in prison for 5 years. We didn't feel like pursuing a civil lawsuit, as this is an experience we truly wanted to put behind our backs as soon as we could. Thank you for listening, and please be nicer to disabled people. We have a lot on our plate to start with. Please do not make it harder for us. Please note, for the information of everyone who's going to mention seatbelts being mandatory in their cars, my passenger was an intoxicated petite female coworker I did not know very well. I'm very much larger than her. Yes, her not buckling up was a safety risk. I judged that risk to be less of a problem than potentially winding up in a confrontation when it was just us in an enclosed space. This was going to be an ITA post until I found a freaking cop waiting at my house to give me a superiority check. Earlier tonight, I went to an event my boss holds once a month, where everyone shows up to a fancy restaurant and has dinner and gets some human-to-human interaction, which my boss apparently felt was lacking. He pays for all of it, and I'm a fan of the food. And less so the people, but I feel like that's life. In college wasn't so long ago that I turned my nose up at a free meal. The coworker in question found herself was at a ride home and several drinks in after her ride had a family emergency and had to leave early. My car's cheap to run, so I offered to give her a lift home. It is worth noting that I'm in no way, shape, or form a speed freak. I lost a loved one in a car wreck, but I'm sure not going to be doing that to someone else just so I can get an adrenaline rush. My coworker is the sort of girl that, when anxious, does not stop talking. Like, I'm not sure how she's able to breathe with how much she talks. For the most part, I didn't mind. Just focusing on following the GPS directions and getting her home safe, with an occasional agreement noise thrown in. Then a wild BMW decides he wants to play games. I am not aware of anything I did other than drive a fancy electric car that could have drawn his ire. But on a way that did have a small amount of traffic, this idiot started to orbit my car. He'd come up on the left, cut in front of me way too close, brake check, then drop back on the right and pull up so close he'd smell the exhaust if my car had any. I had no idea what this dude's issue was, and I had absolutely no idea if he was on drugs or could come close to cashing the checks he was writing around my car. I also had no desire to get into a car accident. The entire time I'm realizing how dangerous this situation could be, my coworker is just chattering away. I kept trying to get a word in edgewise and couldn't. And eventually I got sick of waiting and just cut her off in the voice reserved for when crap has hit the fan. Courtney, fake name, buckle up and please be quiet. I need to concentrate for a minute. She buckled up but did not shut up.
Huh? What's going on? What do you mean you need to concentrate? Is it that BMW? Are we in danger? I should call my boyfriend.
Panic was rising in her voice at the same time, and I was stressed out enough that I just said, "Shut up." Then I hit the button that saves the last 10 minutes of dashcam footage on the off chance we got pulled over, and waited for a moment where the road was mostly clear ahead of us. I saw the chance and took it. We shot off like a rocket. BMW tried to pursue, but if my baby's got anything in excess, it is definitely acceleration. We took off. And the first chance I got when I couldn't see the other car's headlights, I took an exit. Total time to evade? Less than a minute. Did we hit triple digits? I can neither confirm nor deny. Was it safer than letting that idiot keep doing what he was doing or risking him following us off the highway? You're right, it was. As soon as we were off the highway, I pulled over for a minute and apologized for what had happened and explained my reasoning as best as I could. We were actually only an exit early, so we just took the back roads to her house, and she got out without another word. I felt kinda guilty because she was crying the entire time after we got off the highway, and that was a little scary. The drive from her place to mine was uneventful, until I rolled down my dead-end street and saw a police car waiting for me. I had the delightful experience of a field superiority test in my own driveway, which I passed. I gave the officer a Cliff Notes version of events with footage to back it up. The officer was not surprised by what the dashcam showed, and said I shouldn't make it a habit and to have a nice night. Update: I just woke up to an email from the office manager. Says, good news everyone. Boss will now be reimbursing people for trips home from our get-togethers if you provide a receipt. And also a text message from her to me that says, why is it always you? I feel personally attacked. Another update. That why is it always you comment was meant mostly in jest. Everyone who works with me knows I'm not one to rock the boat, but I keep winding up dipped in misses anyway. For example, when we still had an office, I was joking with one girl I just got done helping and I called her a butthead. Office manager called me into her office and asked me if I'd called that girl a butthead. I confirmed that I had indeed done that. She looked at me, sighed and said, act like you got yelled at and learn to read your audience better. Years ago, long before smartphones or Fitbits, a coworker of mine, Bob, had a relatively mild heart attack. We joked in secret that it was caused by his wife. But the other secret is we weren't really joking. She was awful. She was just an intolerable person, and no one liked her. I'm pretty sure Bob did not like his own wife. If he did, it was probably Stockholm Syndrome. At any rate, when Bob returned to work, he returned with a pedometer clipped to his belt. Every day, Bob would walk as much as he could when he wasn't pinned down to his desk. But he was suffering and his work was suffering. As his supervisor at the time, I figured he was struggling with his recovery. So we just moved a lot of his work to others and left him with the cases he specialized in. That worked for everyone, because those cases drove others nuts and he was a whiz at them. His other work was comparatively easy. However, at the end of his first full week back, the issue became more clear. I overheard Bob's wife berating him in the parking lot because he didn't even meet half of his tips goal. Turns out the pedometer did not come from his doctor, it came from his wife. She was demanding that Bob increase from his current 4,200 steps a day that were almost killing him to somehow 10,000 steps a day.
This will read at least 10,000 at the end of every workday, or there will be consequences.
These were her words. Now Bob was a tall guy with a long stride, so she was somehow expecting him to fit in over 6 miles of walking during his workday while recovering. But you know, since he'd had a heart attack, maybe she was just looking out for him, right? Nope. His doctor had actually cautioned him against overdoing it. He was only supposed to be walking 1.5 miles a day, and not all at once. But his wife wasn't having it. She demanded more, and he tried but wasn't doing so well. After another week of this and another chewing out in the parking lot, we developed a plan. Bob's pedometer just sat on the corner of his desk while he was working. If anyone had to walk down the hall or to the other building, they would grab the pedometer on their way out of the office. Bob did have to tolerate another couple of butt chewings because we rammed him up to 10,000 steps instead of jumping straight there. We figured that would be suspicious otherwise. In the end, well, Bob's speedometer registered over 10,000 steps every day, and almost 1/3 of them were actually his steps. Bob was overjoyed to have the help, and we were all willing to keep his secret because we were frightened of her turning on us. Teamwork makes a dream work. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.